Coinweb is building something really important for the industry, and the analogy that I'll use to describe it is the same one that Toby used in our interview. Now, in the early days of email, you could only send emails to people using the same provider. So if you have Hotmail, you can email other Hotmail users. Same thing with Yahoo or AOL. Now, that's a good way to think of the current state of the blockchain industry, with the major difference being that we pay to use it. And in the case of Ethereum, for example, it's secure and it's decentralized, but it's very expensive. Or in the case of Solana, it's fast and cheap, but it's still largely centralized. And as we saw with their wormhole bridge hack a week ago, there are still severe weak points. Bridges in general are just really risky as they are. So Coinweb is a layer 2 network that doesn't have its own blockchain, but it can connect to multiple layer 1 blockchains so developers can run their dApps through Coinweb on one or multiple chains in parallel. And then the users don't need to know which chain they're using, let alone worry about gas costs. That way, if one chain becomes too expensive, rather than users leaving your dApp and going to another chain, you can actually move to another layer 1 blockchain without the users even knowing about it. There's a lot more to it, but I really want to emphasize the potential here because while Coinweb isn't necessarily a direct competitor to Polkadot, it is solving a similar problem but in a different way, and I do think it has similar potential. Now, since Polkadot has a fully diluted valuation about 90 times bigger than Coinweb's, I think there's some incredible potential and it merits some serious consideration and research. Now, that said, please do your own damn research and don't just take my word for it because I'm not a financial advisor and my circumstances are definitely different from yours. But if you do find the interview to be useful and are interested in these kinds of major infrastructure projects, you can let me know in the comments or by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Now let's jump in. All right, welcome to DeFi Now, everybody. I'm Josh Cross. Here with me is Tony Gilbert, the CEO of Coinweb. Toby, I think I said Tony.
Hey, Josh. Thank you for having me here.
Thanks for coming on the channel. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and jump right into it and let us know what is Coinweb.
So at a high level, Coinweb is a layer 2 cross-computation platform. Effectively, we sit on top of blockchains. We bridge them and we enable developers, companies, individual users to build on top of us and take advantage of multiple functionality of the blockchains that we sit on top of.
So you're a layer 2 that goes above other blockchains. Can you kind of share what kind of benefit this brings to users? Let's start with.
Yeah, sure. I would say just to describe a problem that was described to me 4.5 years ago when I got into this was that email systems early on would only allow you to send an email from an account that you had to another account on the same email client. So for example, if you had a Hotmail account, you could only send an email to another Hotmail account. You couldn't send it to an AOL account. And when this was being explained to me, it was told that this was the same situation with blockchains, that they all sit on silos. So if you build on top of one of them, then you're stuck with it. So if there's a new blockchain or some functionality from new blockchain that comes along, you can't take advantage of that. You're stuck where you are. Or worst of all, if that blockchain becomes too slow or too expensive, then you live or die by it. And that just kind of seemed a little bit crazy as the analogy of not being able to send an email to another email client. And they said, well, we have an architecture that can solve these problems. And that's what we went about building starting in 2017.
That's a really good analogy. That's interesting to think about it with email, but yeah, I like that. So yeah, because right now we're kind of stuck in a situation where there's not much interoperability, and the interoperability that we have, especially with bridges, as we saw recently with the Solana wormhole hack, is really risky. So you guys are doing it in a different way by, I guess, kind of similar to what Polkadot's doing with their parachains, only you're kind of choosing other blockchains to be layer 1s that you can connect, right?
So we have a different approach to Polkadot. That's not saying that ours is better or theirs is worse in any way whatsoever. We don't use a blockchain that sits in between the layer 1 and us. We have a different consensus mechanism. which is similar to rollups with ZK, but we're cross-chain. We're not just mapping down to Ethereum. Today, we are mapping down to Bitcoin-derived chains, and then we have a roadmap and a whole load of announcements coming up in the next, pretty much every month, that we're connecting to a host of different chains. And we have a very particular view on which chains that we are and the roadmap of which ones we're connecting to and what we're going to map down to. And that really ultimately is shaped by what our vision for our end solution is and which users are going to use that end solution, and thus which underlying chains we're going to connect to so that we can deliver the functionality of that end solution.
So you're picking and choosing.
Josh.
Well, so you're using, you're choosing specific blockchains based on the functionality that they offer for your end vision. Do you want to share a little bit more about what your end vision is for Coinweb?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I think some of the immediate efforts that we're looking to deliver on are cross-chain tokenization, very specifically that to try and solve the pain points of end users using a token that are subject to the performance of the underlying chain, specifically like around speed and around cost. We've got to find a solution to the fact that the cost and the speed of transferring tokens doesn't carry on going up and down. Is a huge barrier to entry for end customers that are pretty much crypto uneducated. That's not going to work for them. So we're looking to solve that in the coming 3 or 4 months. That's being built now. Also, unifying the developer space. There are quite a few very, very competent layer 1 blockchains that have some very complicated coding language, and the availability of those developers to build dApps in that language is really limited. So we're going to unify the developer space so that you can build on top of Coinweb in very common languages, Java, so on and so forth. And then we do the heavy lifting when it comes to converting that down to the underlying layer 1 chains. And then also parallel execution of smart contracts. They've got to become usable. And if they're, once again, too expensive to operate, or they're too slow, or so on and so forth, then the adoption is going to be damaged as a result of that. So being able to set up and execute a smart contract in our layer that can react to pieces of information stored in multiple underlying chains, and that also includes smart contracts that are in underlying chains. So those are some of the efforts. And obviously we're doing a multi-currency wallet for end users as well.
Okay, so from a user's perspective, the user will basically, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this user basically will connect to Coinweb, and then they will use that to access, whatever wallet you guys are using. You said you're developing a multi-chain wallet. That if whatever is going on in the underlying layer 1s doesn't really concern the users, because you can kind of switch between different blockchains based on the functionality that you want from different chains. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's spot on.
Cool. So I guess then to kind of further delve into that, could you have, maybe I want to develop a dApp, but I want, let's say Ethereum is the most decentralized and secure smart contract platform right now, but it's also prohibitively expensive for multiples. So I could have aspects of my dApp running on Ethereum and then aspects of it running on a more high throughput one. Maybe I want my smart contracts to run on a different one, but I want my governance on Ethereum or something like that. You could do that.
Absolutely. That's really at the core of what we're doing. That's one of the core missions of where we're at. So, for example, if we set up a smart contract in the Coinweb layer that could then react to clauses effectively set up in an Ethereum smart contract, but it could be subject to information that was needed to be stored in a blockchain with that was effectively the gold standard of security, which could be the Bitcoin blockchain. So we could then hive off what functionality was being run in different blockchains, and then that could be subject to cost and speed so that you could optimize the output of what your dApp was.
Okay. So then what, if you're a developer, how does that look as far as, because you mentioned you're using, programming languages that a lot of developers already understand rather than, them having to learn Solidity. How are you guys making it easier for developers to do this rather than, if I'm building on multiple chains, that could, I'm not a developer, but it sounds to me like that could potentially be more complex for a developer rather than just building on a single chain.
Well, it depends if what they needed by way of functionality, I would say. So a blockchain-specific developer who didn't need multiple functionality of underlying chains, absolutely, may turn around and say, well, I've got Haskell skills, I'm just going to build on top of Cardano. And I would understand that. But if there was a developer that needed functionality of multiple underlying chains, then obviously that wouldn't work. So we would become a choice for them there. But also, very importantly, if there were users or a company or a group of projects that had an existing developer base that did not have blockchain experience, and we're dealing with a lot of that at this moment in time, and they were like, well, we can build a wallet, we can build an app, but at the point in time that touches underlying blockchain technology, we get completely lost, then once again, we would become the choice there. And that, by the way, is the vast majority of existing businesses or companies that are out there today. And they struggle quite considerably with, I would say, trying to find relevant developers with a relevant knowledge base to be able to deliver on that. And that's where we really win. And a lot of the time we see them also approaching existing projects, saying, hey, will you help us build? And then that project is like, we're really busy, delivering on our roadmap or building out what our core is. And I'm really, really sorry, unless you're going to put a considerable amount of money on the table, then we're not interested to do that. And I think that does happen. You saw an incredible project recently, HoloRide, that launched on Elrond, but it took the likes of Audi that were backing that project to get their attention to help them to build that. And anyone that's short of Audi is really left with the option of, well, here's an SDK, here's a public API. And, we wish you the best of luck. And that's a huge point of frustration for anyone that couldn't just be considered a tier one player, on a worldwide scale. And that's another barrier to entry. And we're looking to also solve that.
So you're kind of mentioning traditional businesses. So would you say that that's your target market here, is trying to onboard traditional businesses to be able to utilize the functionality of the blockchain without going through that painful mess you just described?
Importantly, so that is to be said, that's definitely one approach that we have. And it's definitely something that we've got a strong focus on whilst Coinweb is, we're building projects on top of it in a permissioned form. But when we open up on mainnet with a public API, that's when there'll be a huge drive for developers to come and build on top of us. But in the first instance, and whilst we're permissioned, absolutely, we're working with traditional businesses just as an adoption strategy, that if we work with a customer that has 5 million users and we can convert 10, 20% of those users to our platform, then it drives adoption of our platform. It drives the use case of our token. then that is definitely a focus for us in the first instance. But we're not an enterprise platform, and we do allow them to interact with blockchains in a fully decentralized format as well. So it's about striking that balance, I would say.
Okay, so it's kind of a way of helping to quickly bootstrap it because you can access their user base to kind of grow the protocol, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then kind of beyond that, you're just going to, I guess, just build it out so that anybody can access it and put it all out there.
Yeah. And that's when we'll release on mainnet. We have to really mitigate as many security concerns that we can before we do that. As you touched upon earlier, hacks are becoming more commonplace now. And we expect as more useful information passes between layer 1 to layer 2 and vice versa, that's when we're going to see that as a honeypot for hackers. So when we make that decision to launch on mainnet, we need to be able to mitigate as many of those security concerns as possible, for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Okay. So your coin is going to be it'll be built on Coinweb, but Coinweb isn't a blockchain. You guys don't have a blockchain, right?
Right.
It'll be hosted on your network. I wanted to touch on this before we finish talking about the user experience. If I am a dApp developer and I say I want my token to be, I use Coinweb and I put my security say on Ethereum, but then I want my token to be on a different one. What happens if there's something wrong with that blockchain? Can I then move my tokens to a different blockchain natively?
Absolutely. Not only can you, but we're the system that is just about to be delivered now is that you can do it manually or you can do it automatically. So we're going to set up almost a switching system that measures, let's say, the pre-agreed KPIs of a blockchain, cost, speed, so on and so forth. And then should that KPI drop, then there would be a failover to the next blockchain that would also have KPIs set for it. So and that could waterfall across as many blockchains that we connect it to. So effectively, we would be broadcasting those tokens down to the underlying chain of choice, and then you could make a decision that should it become too expensive or too slow, then we could seamlessly and automatically start broadcasting those tokens down to the next chain of choice. So which would then ultimately deliver stability and continuity to the end user experience, which definitely doesn't happen today, as we all know, right? So that's something we're looking to deliver on really in the next 3 to 4 months. And a lot of the projects that we're already building for and we signed to build on top of us, the architecture is relying upon that system as well. So this is something that we're not only building to then tell the world about, we're building for it to be used in the coming months by a mass customer base as well. So the pressure is very much on for our dev team. This isn't going to be a feature that is just novel. This is a feature that is going to be dropped into dApps, and we're contracted that there's a rollout process to a really big customer base in the near term. So the guys are feeling the pressure on that one right now.
Yeah, so that's actually pretty brilliant. See, what you're saying is the users will, they'll just interact through Coinweb on the front end whenever they're using things. And you're saying that I can, as a developer, I can say, I want my token on this chain, but if it becomes too slow or expensive, move it to this chain. And if that one becomes slow and expensive, but the first one got faster, move it back or something, or however you want to do it. But then the users don't even need to know that that's happening because all they need is a seamless experience and fast, cheap transactions.
All behind the curtain.
Yeah. And you have customer bases that are already waiting for this to be rolled out. So this is one of your kind of, because you said it, it's not like a novel thing. I think it's a very essential thing for us to have adoption in the space.
Absolutely. In fact, I would go as far as to say I don't see the space moving forward very fast without solving what seem like relatively simple problems, but obviously they're quite complicated. Without solving these sorts of problems now.
Okay, yeah, awesome. I like it. So I want to ask you about the CWEB token and how it's used. I guess, like, what is the utility of it and how is it used in the protocol?
Well, to run any of the functionality on the platform, you require the native token, being the CWEB token, what will be the native token at mainnet launch, as gas fees, effectively. So you'll have to be able to hold a balance of CWEB. So should that to be set up and issue your own token, issue your own smart contracts, broadcast any information down to the underlying chains, so on and so forth, you will need our native token to be able to execute that functionality.
Is this something that users will need to keep in their wallets, or can you have it to where dApp developers can hold a balance and kind of pay the gas fees on the CWEB network for their users?
Absolutely, and the answer is both, and definitely both. So we're in the wallet that we're just about to release now. To be able to operate any of the functionality within that wallet, or to buy other tokens, commercially available other tokens, you will pay those fees through CWEB. And also the cross-chain tokenization platform is going to be built into the wallet as well. And that could be used for anything that had a real purpose, or it could be quite novel. Users could play around with it, and we can educate them on it. They can get to know what it takes to set up a token and what the different trade-offs are, and what different chains they can encode that down into, and view that token within that chain using the Explorer. And all of that functionality will require CWEB. And so they have to hold a balance of CWEB within their wallet. But for example, we announced a partnership that we're piloting with Coldwell Banker in Thailand and looking to roll out thereafter. For example, users will not require to hold a CWEB token in their wallet. That will be behind the curtain, just as you've outlined, because that's the way in which we've agreed to do it with Coldwell Banker, and that's how they wanted to have it, the use case for their customer base. So yeah, absolutely, the answer is either or.
Yeah, I think that's really important, especially for a lot of different kind of companies or applications that, we're so used to paying subscription fees for the services that we use. And it would make sense that, users could be onboarded into the blockchain space. Maybe all they're doing is paying a monthly fee to access things, and then the company will use that monthly fee to help to pay for their infrastructure costs, and the gas fees that they're paying for their users is part of that infrastructure cost, so that the users don't even have to do anything with that. I think that's really important.
You have just touched upon something else that's very important but different, which is the ability to fiat on-ramp and off-ramp to your project seamlessly. And that's something else that we've seen a number of projects struggle with, and why the likes of MoonPay have become so successful and gained a huge market cap overnight. I believe they closed at $3.5 billion for a company that's only a few years old, and they crystallized that valuation with a raise close to, I believe, $500 million against that, by enabling fiat ingress and egress. So, for example, if a retail user just wants to pay a monthly subscription, they need to be able to connect that to their bank account or to a card, or so on and so forth, to be able to pay that subscription, where the token purchase and sales would happen behind the curtain. So that is something that we already have direct relationships in place with. We have 2 DeFi projects that built on top of Coinweb 2 years ago, and we issued a stable token for them. They have licenses all around the world. They have full fiat on-ramping and off-ramping. and we're able to reach in to those assets effectively to enable exactly what you just referred to, which is what MoonPay does, for example. So yes, you need to be able to have the ability to do both to drive adoption, but you also have to have the rails and the ability to be able to deliver that. And that's exactly what we have. We have that ability to do today.
That's awesome. Can you share what those two DeFi projects are? Or is that going to come later?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. No, we've got one's Blockfort and the other one's on-ramp.
Okay. Blockforce and all. Yeah, I'll have to check them out. Yep. All right. Well, what's before we wrap this up, what is the kind of the next thing that you're most excited about, or you think that the audience should be most excited about as far as the development of Coinweb?
I think it's definitely where I think there's a there's a picture of me in the different dev offices we have, and then I believe they throw darts at it because I insist that we have to build and ship products in parallel to building out the core along the roadmap, and that's something where I believe that we're not the only ones. I did mention Elrond earlier. They have a real drive towards this. I have a huge respect for their team, which is building usable technology and shipping that, as I said, in parallel to building out the roadmap. So what you'll see from us in the near term is the working e-wallet with full fiat on-ramping and off-ramping, fully integrated with like a number of tier one exchanges for liquidity, and a cross-chain tokenization platform. And then shortly after that, you will see big name customers utilizing that functionality, which are really just component working parts of the core, in parallel to us building out the roadmap of the core, which involves us continuously connecting to new blockchains and making those announcements. But those are effectively two different efforts that run in parallel, and hence why people kind of keep on throwing darts at pictures of me. I mean, they hate me.
Yeah. That's funny. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I think this is really cool. When I first found out about you guys, I got really excited about it. I think solving for interoperability, and this is also kind of solving for scalability, because we already have some solutions for scalability, but they're maybe less secure or things like that. So I think this is really awesome, and I'm excited to see the mainnet launch eventually too.
Yeah, no, likewise. Well, that's at the earliest at the end of this year, but more likely towards the beginning of 2023.
Well, I'm interested for the long term, so not a problem for me.
Thanks.
Well, Toby, thanks for coming on. This has been a really good chat.
Thank you very much for having me.